I'm Royce Brooks. I'm the Executive Director of Annie's List, and I'm so excited for today's conversation. Before we jump right in, I'd love to give you a little bit of an introduction to Annie's List, who we are, what we do, why we're so passionate about our work. Over the last 17 years, Annie's List has elected more than 140 progressive women all across Texas, trained thousands more, and invested over $19 million to build women's political power. We know Texas, from El Paso to Houston and from Dallas to the Valley, and we know firsthand that Texas is the biggest battleground state, because at Annie's List, we've been doing the work to make it that way. And right now, we're only 9 seats away from flipping the Texas House to Democratic control in November. Last cycle, Annie's List helped a historic number of women win their races across Texas. I'm very proud to share that we had a record-breaking 84% win rate in 2018. That means 31 of the record 37 candidates we endorsed won their elections. In fact, 85% of all the women who ran for the Texas State Legislature in 2018 were Annie's List trainees. With that unprecedented track record, we led the Democratic Party in flipping 12 Texas House seats from red to blue. And this year, we're about to blow that record out of the water. After last week's runoff elections, we officially have a record-breaking number of Democratic women running for Texas House seats. Over 60 women. Y'all, this November, we're gonna elect more women than ever in our history. We're going to send a record number of women to the Texas Ledge. And fun fact, the Texas House has never elected a woman as Speaker. This cycle, we have the chance not only to flip the House to Democratic control, but to see a progressive woman elected Speaker for the first time in the history of our state. Now, y'all know we're living through an unprecedented moment of crisis on a global scale. There are those who warn us not to politicize this crisis. But the fact is that this crisis is the direct result of our politics. From the cruel, fear-driven leadership of the president to the years of irresponsible, short-sighted disinvestment in our communities under Texas Republican leadership. Because of politics, Texas has the largest uninsured population in the country during a global pandemic. Because of politics, families all over Texas are struggling through this moment without paid family or medical leave. Because of politics, Texans are being forced to choose between exercising their right to vote and their health and that of their children. But the solutions that will keep people safe are the same solutions our Annie's List champions stand for. Elections have consequences, y'all, and our work continues. That's why I'm so grateful to all of you joining us today, especially our sponsors, whose support makes what we do possible. We'd like to give a big thank you to today's sponsors: Becky Bullard, Beth Bice, Roy C. Brooks, Jim Davis, Shelley Hayes McMahon, Laura Hernandez, Pamela Pearson, Yvonne Palayo, Sally Son, Nancy Solana, and Kathy Spicer. If you would like to support our work, and please do, please visit bit.ly/support Annie's List TX, which is also in your chat box. So please access that link. And now, y'all, without further ado, I am so proud to introduce today's guest. Jennifer Palmieri is the New York Times best-selling author of Dear Madam President. She served as communications director for Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign and White House communications director for President Obama. Jen is currently a contributor to Vanity Fair and an advisor for the Emerson Collective. Her latest book was released yesterday and is called She Proclaims: Our Declaration of Independence from a Man's World. I could not be more excited. Jen, thank you for joining us.
And I'm so happy to be here because I love Annie's List and I love Royce. And I love talking about women.
Well, fantastic. Thank you for joining us. And look, I have gotten that restart message many a day on Zoom as well. So I feel I feel your pain there for sure. But why don't we get just started with the conversation, and as we get started, y'all who are joining us, please feel free to submit any questions that you have for Jen in the Q&A box, and we will take a look at some of those toward the end of our conversation. So Jen, in the first place, we've received questions from some of our attendees about your time serving with President Obama. And for the younger people or just anyone newer to politics joining us today, can you talk about how you got started in politics and sort of what advice you would give to your younger self starting along that path?
Yeah, so well, there's like the normal stuff about believe in yourself, and that, that I think a lot of people decades into their career know that they should have had more self-confidence at the beginning. But the other thing one thing I would tell myself is that women are not your competition, they are your sisters. And this is a big theme for my new book, She Proclaims, which is a Declaration of Independence from a Man's World, because there are so many things that we have internalized as women trying to work in a male-dominated world, where men continue to hold the vast majority of the power. And one of them is that one of the most corrosive things we've internalized is that women are in competition with each other for a finite amount of success in the world. Nobody thinks there's a finite amount of success in the world for white men, right? Nobody thinks that, otherwise late night TV show hosts would not look as they do, and our roster of presidents would not look like they do. And I've always tried to support other women, but I would do it with some misgivings that maybe I was helping a woman who might outshine me or helping a woman who might even replace me. And what I have learned is that supporting women and women's success is a renewable resource. It is not a finite resource, and that when you support women, it comes back to you tenfold. But also, this is a proven sociological fact: more women in the room begets more women in the room. That begets more opportunity for all of us. More people of color in the room begets more people of color in the room. That's the thing that I would tell my younger self. I would have rebounded. I would have rebounded with more benefit from that earlier on, and so would have a lot of other women. I really believe in ourselves to be in competition with other women is what keeps the lid on women having success. I want to say two things about President Obama that made him such a good boss that people may not know. If you saw, he did this graduation, an online graduation, a month or so ago, a couple of months ago. It was so nice to see him again.
We'll just see him again.
Wasn't it? I know. And he said something in there that could sound trite, but I experienced it firsthand. He said that, like, do good in the world and be a good person and be a good friend, and that it will get noticed. And my story, you know, one of the ways I became the White House communications director was, first of all, Dan Pfeiffer recruited me to come to the White House. He was communications director at the time. But also, President Obama had seen, I had never met him, but he had seen, I wrote in 2010, I wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post to defend my friend, Elizabeth Edwards, who had come under a lot of attack in a political book. And she was going through a really difficult, this was John Edwards, this former senator, former presidential candidate, this is his wife. She's going through a really difficult time. And she was a complex person. I loved her dearly, but she's a complex person. And I wrote a piece defending her. And Obama said to me later, he's like, I saw that. And I was like, that is a good person. Like, that's somebody I want on my team, somebody who's going to, you know, whereas other people had told me it was a stupid thing for me to do because to support Elizabeth when she was a controversial figure was not good for my career. But you know who noticed? Barack Obama. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is that when we would be in a meeting with Obama, and I think Royce, we might have talked about this before, if there were always women in the room, of course, and there were always women of color in the room, of course, because it was his presidency. But I found that if you did not speak up, and often it was the women that didn't speak up, he would go around the room and ask you to speak up at the end of the meeting. And what I saw was that it was the women, and particularly the women of color, that he got the most important input from, because they were likely, their experiences were likely to be different from other people's in the room, and they had a perspective he hadn't already heard. There was not a lot of yesing. And, you know, so I think that sometimes women can be intimidated about speaking up, particularly when you're the only woman in the room or the only woman of color in the room or one of a few. And what you need, and you think that if you're not thinking like somebody else, that your perspective doesn't matter. Well, of course your perspective matters more, not less. If you have something different to say, and your perspective matters more, not less, if you didn't go to the same school or have the same kind of experience. And, you know, if you ever doubt yourself, just remember, if Barack Obama were in this meeting, he would ask me what I think. And sometimes I use that myself as a little confidence boost, but I think that can help the young women that are listening today too.
I love that. And
he would, Royce, he would absolutely ask you what you thought.
My pocket as well. And these are some of the ideas that you talk about in your new book, mm-hmm. She Proclaims. Can you just tell us a little bit about it? Mm-hmm. What led you to decide to write this? And is it a sequel to Dear Madam President, or is it meant to sort of stand on its own?
Yeah, I mean, it could stand on its own, but it is, I mean, in my mind, and sort of like my own personal progression, it is definitely a sequel. Dear Madam President is a letter I wrote after the 2016 campaign. Annie's List has been a big supporter of it, and I've had a chance to talk to you all about it a couple of times. But what I experienced when I first went to work for Hillary on the 16 campaign, I did not think it was that big of a deal or going to be that hard to elect the first female president, which is comical in retrospect, and comical, if not ridiculous to, you know, those of you that support Annie's List. But I just thought she was the best person for the job. And we'd had the first Black president, and I thought that that was harder in America than the first woman president. And it's just different. You know, I mean, you all know this. It's the bar that the women are held to is higher, tougher, different. We have than male candidates. We ask different questions. Voters have different questions of women candidates than they do of men. We fret really a lot about a woman's ambition, because even in 2020, it's an unusual thing to see a woman with so much ambition, the ambition that's needed to run for president of the United States. You know, we question her hair, her voice, all of these things. And that book was about sort of unpacking what's going on there. And then this book is about, well, what do we do with it? Because, you know, I had a epiphany myself in considering this book, which was, I used to, you know, you'll see it's behind me, the big poster. She proclaims our Declaration of Independence from a man's world. And I wanted to be specific about using the word man's world and telling women to break from it. Because I myself I would bristle when somebody would tell me that I was a woman struggling in a man's world. I thought it was self-defeatist for women to say that, because while I knew women had it harder, I didn't understand why we would self-proclaim ourselves to be outsiders. It was tough enough. Also, I don't feel that men are my enemy. I've had many male mentors. They've been really supportive of me. But what I've come to realize is that it's just different for us. And while I think for a long time, for decades even, women made progress in the professional world, in politics, by sort of modeling ourselves after men and following their path. But at some point, I think it's about 3 decades ago, that path turned into a rut. And if you look around, I thought when I entered the workplace in the late 80s, early 90s, I thought we were done, right? This is all resolved. Women have rights. We're in the workplace. We're good. We'll continue to rise. And we stopped. We stopped rising. And what I appreciated was, I thought I was doing great in a man's world, but I wasn't doing great. I was doing great making it run well for them. I was doing great perpetuating the very power systems that block women, and this is the important part for white women, block all people of color from getting the power, success, fulfillment that we all deserve. I was just propping it up. Millions of women work in corporate America, and 7% of the Fortune 500 CEOs are women, right? Hundreds of thousands of women work in politics, right?
Natural.
Huh?
That's not just natural.
Right. That's not women. Yeah. The problem is not a lack of talent or effort on the part of women. And this is I remember seeing in 2018, there were fewer female CEOs in the Fortune 500 than there were in 2017. And I just found it validating, not even demoralizing. It's well, of course, because there's nowhere left for women to go in a world that was not built for them. And what we're doing now. So it doesn't mean that we all stage a walkout. It means that we stage a walkout from the biases and beliefs and behaviors in our own head that hold us back, like questioning our worth, like questioning our value. I mean, there are reasons why we question our value. All of our life, and for all of human history, women have been sent signals that we are not as interesting or as valuable as men. The markets have been built to value men's efforts over women. That's why the United States women's soccer team, the winningest team in American history, has to sue to get paid what they're worth. So it's what I do chapter by chapter is sort of unearth what's behind these sort of this behavior and biases that we have in our heads, men have in our heads, and get at the root of what they and say, here's how we banish this. Because I think that's the only path forward. And the good thing is all of this is in our own control, because it's all stuff that's in our own heads.
Well, I love that. And that really segues into a question that we have from one of our participants on the line. Ireland, are you with us?
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi. So I'm Ireland. I'm 16, and I'm a really big fan of yours. Dear Madam President is one of my favorite books.
Yay.
And so my question kind of touches on the idea of internalized misogyny, like you brought up in the beginning. And it's in a society that teaches us that women are our competition and we have to tear each other down in order to succeed. What are some tangible actions we can take to uplift and support our fellow women, especially if we are in a place of privilege, like being white women or educated women or women who have access to disposable income and stuff like that?
Yeah. So it's a great question. I'm not sure if they all shared with you, or we certainly can in the chat. I wrote a piece for Vanity Fair about how white women can be better Black Lives Matter allies. And I mean, I think part of it, the first part is awareness. And I wrote She Proclaims, it tracks the history of the suffrage movement, because I wanted to go back. I did not know anything about the suffrage movement. I don't know about you, Ireland. I was not taught this in school. But I went back to understand the last time women got together to really advocate for power and were successful. What can I learn from that? And what I learned was women without any power at all know they deserve better. When they band together, they can make real change. I also learned that when white women turn away from Black Americans, when we are pitting ourselves, when the disenfranchised pit themselves against each other, the patriarchy wins, right? The white male patriarchy and those power systems stay in place. And I think it's important for people to know more of this history. There were times when women suffragists and African Americans were on the same side. There were times when they were not aligned. And that you have to appreciate also, even while we personally are not responsible for a lot of these actions, they are our legacy. We inherited them, and they impact the way we are viewed today, and they continue to have repercussions for Black Americans today. For example, the white woman who falsely accused Emmett Till of assaulting her and led to his death. It was a white woman who falsely accused a Black man of raping her that started the Tulsa massacre. They're all the way up a line to the 53% of us who voted for Donald Trump, and the woman who called the cops on the bird watcher in Central Park, right? These are all reasons why Black Americans can be skeptical of white women as good allies, and we have more to prove. We have more to prove to them now. I find that you need to listen. You need to listen and understand, and you can't go. And as painful as it is, I think the Floyd reckoning, when George Floyd's murder, with that, the reckoning that you saw white people go through was all the more upsetting, for lack of a better word, because the fact that we were so devastated and shocked by it revealed that our ignorance, that we didn't understand that this happened in America every day. And that's why, I saw a lot of my white friends running to their Black friends for absolutions. Like, you can't do that. You absolutely cannot do that. It's just too much to ask. But you can try, you can understand the history, and you can be a better supporter now, because as much as I hate the patriarchy, the truth is it's been a refuge to white women in a way it has not been. As opposed to the prison that it is for people of color. And it has sheltered white women, and when we acquiesce to it, we prop it up, we perpetuate it. So advocate for yourself, but advocate for people of color as just as hard, if not harder, and do it with a knowledge that that we are connected and our fortunes are aligned here. But I think, so it's great to protest, it's great to vote. We have to make sure that we do all these things, but what do you do in your own life? If you're in school, do you advocate, if you have more opportunities than others, do you not just perhaps give financially, but make it your business to learn to advocate for your friends that have less? If you're working, do you make it your business to try to recruit more Black women to come into your workplace, other women of color? I mean, that's something that I tried to do. I was proud, and when I was communications director for Obama, we had the most, when I came in, there were no Black women that worked there. When I left, there were 7. It was a challenge, that the president was concerned about, a lot of Black reporters were concerned about, and we really grew that, to that good number. And those women have continued to go on, do amazing things, and they're totally my support system.
Jen, thank you for that. And we have linked to your Vanity Fair piece in chat. So folks who are with us, everybody, please read it. I have found it very insightful and very thoughtful. And I'd love to sort of dig into this idea a bit of kind of how can white people in general and white women in particular be true and active and constructive allies in sort of the overall fight for progress, you know. And I definitely have personally experienced the sort of absolution seeking of some of my white friends in the wake of George Floyd's murder and the attendant uprisings. You know, and I do think that there's a sense in which you know, white women and white people overall are sort of seeking guidance and leadership from the Black community, but ultimately, Black people did not build the patriarchy. They did not sort of build these white supremacist systems, and we cannot dismantle them either. Yeah. White people have to be actively participating in doing that. And so how do you start?
Well, I think there's a lot of fear that white women have, right? Because for like, just to unpack that for a minute, I think first of all, in the absence of having real power, which historically, you know, I'm going back hundreds of years, white women have not. White women have been, right, they've been, you know, somewhere between held back and coddled, but they've never had real power. And so I think it's why there's a rush to smooth things over and make things okay, right? Because in the absence of real power, that's what we have traditionally done. And I think for a lot of women, for a lot of white women, when we saw the agony that was revealed during the protests, and it just hit us how prevalent the problem really is and how entirely different universes we are in. A friend of mine, a Black colleague of mine, actually from Obama White House, did a great speech that went viral about this, where she's like, we live in a different, we fight a different fight every day than white people do. And I think that, you know, that's not, white people internalize that this time around in a way they never have before. And it made them panic that everybody thought they were racist, and what do they do about this to fix this right away and smooth it over right away? And the answer is you can't fix it right away. And I think, you know, for white women with Black friends, they're mortified. Like, what do my Black friends think of you? It's like, hey, your Black friends knew you had a lot of racial bias in you before this happened. They will. This is not news to them. They will still be your friends. And, you know, I did a great conversation yesterday with my friend and former colleague, Valerie Jarrett, and we talked about this. And she said, you know, because what I have found is Black women, when I say this, they're very welcoming. They're very welcoming of the pieces that I've written about this, because they say, and I'm sure, you know, that no one's ever expressed frustration to me for where I may have fallen down before, although I'm sure there are those times. But they're just so relieved to have an ally that I can talk to my people in a way that they just don't want to do, shouldn't have to do, as you know, Royce, and, you know, and aren't able to be heard in the same way. And so I can tell, you know, my white friends, stop posting Black squares on Instagram and thinking that's gonna make a difference. And I really think there is, you know, the change in my own family, you know, my own father, who's 88 years old, was a former Republican, and was in the Navy, you know, for his whole life. You know, he subscribed to the Marshall Project because he wanted to figure out what can he do to, like, what can he support in the aftermath of the protests to be better informed. So he's like, I'm gonna give money every week every month to the Marshall Project to understand more about criminal justice and what else I need to learn. You know, this is like, I was like, the change in people's minds, I think, is going to have a huge impact. You have to be vigilant about it. But what I really tell women is, like, what are you doing in your own life? What are you doing in the place that you work, or in the community that you are in? It's not just about posting things, which sometimes you feel is more self-involved and, you know, trying to present themselves in a better light than it's about actual change. But I feel like it's got to happen in your own life.
Well, I agree. And thank you for sort of being a leader on that front, and you know, talking to your own people. Since I think that really is an important part of this. We have a couple of questions chatted into the Q&A, and one in particular I'd love to have you answer for us. Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez was verbally accosted by a congressional colleague. He called her an effing bee, for those who might have kids in the background listening. You know, what are your thoughts about sort of that level of discourse in our Congress, A, and B, sort of how do we move forward from that?
So I'm not even sure Royce and I spoke earlier today. I'm not even sure if I told you this. I just finished a piece for Vanity Fair about this. That's going to post this afternoon, and basically what I said is, these men, you know, and it's Ocasio-Cortez, but then also, interestingly, it's like somebody needs to send Taylor Swift over to the House Republican caucus, because those men need to calm down, because they were like, they're so fragile, these men. They're so fragile. They're so easily upset. There's Ocasio-Cortez, but then also Liz Cheney, white Republican woman, who's the third most highest ranking Republican in the House. She got viciously attacked by her colleagues yesterday because she's telling people they should listen to Fauci instead of Trump when it comes to managing the virus. So what I said is, it's like, these men are dinosaurs, okay? They are dinosaurs. Now, that means they are loud, they are brash, they can wreak havoc, they can cause real damage, but they are on the path, I really believe this, they are on the path to extinction because they failed to adapt. And you know who's really good at adapting? Women. I mean, you know, Ocasio-Cortez herself has said, I'm paraphrasing it, but like, she gets it. She's like, her very existence is a threat. The fact that she exists in the Congress, just her being, and the fact that she was an upstart, that she's a young woman, that she's a Hispanic woman, it is a threat to the very power systems within that Congress, right? She's a walking symbol of that. So, you know, she articulated the very conventional view that rising unemployment and rising poverty numbers correlate to an increase in crime. Okay, that's a very conventional thing to say. And some of her white male colleagues are like, I say that all the time, nobody attacks me. But she just, I think her very presence just sets off in these men outrage and fear. And what it reminded me of was, I got my pup down here. She keeps banging into things. The more the
merrier.
No, she likes hanging out with me on the Zooms. She does. It reminded me of Brett Kavanaugh. You know, that rage that we saw Brett Kavanaugh when he thought a woman was going to deny him his right to be a Supreme Court justice. And what struck me, I was like, wow, you seem really frustrated. Yeah. This seems to be a new emotion for you, Brett Kavanaugh. It's not a new emotion for me. Being frustrated in the workplace is not a new emotion for me. The truth is, women are better at controlling their emotions than men. because we know what it's like to feel intimidated and have to ignore it. We know what it's like to feel frustrated because we don't get what we want and have to move on. And what's amazing about Ocasio-Cortez is she finds a way to channel that into something positive that benefits her. This is why we should not be discouraged. She is not a dinosaur. She knows how to adapt. She has been, no offense to the Bernie Sanders people on this call, because I actually love that old curmudgeon, but she has adapted. She's been there for 18 months and she has adapted to be more effective in her 18 months than he has figured out to do in 30 years. She's like, I have quotes from her where she said, I realized, I need to be, basically you got to be a colleague here. You got to figure out what you need to do to survive and be successful in the role you are in. That is what women do all the time, because we are constantly trying to fit ourselves in and adapt ourselves to male-dominated workplaces. And it has made her effective. She's an extraordinary communicator. She's a very able politician. When she speaks at hearings, they always go viral because she manages to decimate the witness with a smile on her face, and she manages to take policy and make it relatable to our real lives. Her male colleagues don't have to go to that lengths, but her male colleagues are not breakout stars the way she is too. So yes, it's outrageous that she had to endure that, but she is going to run circles around. She is already running circles around these men, and she's going to continue to run circles around the men. Take what they give us and figure out a way to channel ourselves, not to behave ourselves and sit down and be quiet and be good, but channel that anger that and frustration and fear that we can feel to benefit ourselves. And she's a great model for that.
Well, I think that segues quite nicely into an additional question we have from our audience. Mary Elizabeth, are you there? What's your question for Jen?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, Jen.
Hi.
What keeps you going when everything around you feels like it's on fire?
Everything around me is on. Yeah, everything around me is on fire, so I have to keep going. I have not, the 2016 campaign was horrendous to live through, and I was so desperate for it to end. And then when it ended, it was actually worse. And I just haven't stopped, honestly, since then. But I'll tell you what keeps me inspired really are women. I thought after Hillary lost, I thought, oh my God, like the women in America, I thought about the little kids and the women. And I was like, little kids are going to be terrified, and the women are going to feel so defeated and devastated and demoralized. And what woman is going to look at what Hillary Clinton went through and say, sign me up for that, right? But what happened was we were all devastated for a while, and then we got up off the mat and we marched. And I did not participate in the women's marches. I wanted to see what America was going to do in this moment. And I was blown away. And as soon as I saw the millions of women across, I was like, we are never going back, because we were just sent a big fat message that told us we didn't matter. And our reaction was to reject that. And in some ways, I feel better now in that it's all out in the open, right? Like we can't kid ourselves about the state of how women are treated in America today. We just have to fight back. But all of us knew that we deserve better, just like the women who 150 years ago started the march to suffrage, because even though they had no power, they knew that women deserved better. And the fact, and even in the try, Hillary always talks about the try. What matters is the try. It's not the winning, it's the trying that matters. Even in, the 6 women ran for president this time, and obviously we ended up with, I love Joe Biden, but we ended up with a very old, white, extraordinarily experienced politician as our nominee. But what mattered was that they were all willing to get in the ring. What matters really is that at the core, they think they deserve better. That tells me, that's what inspires me, because it's not the calculation about, I can definitely win this, therefore I'm going to get in the race. It's the calculation that it's worth the fight that tells you America is headed in the right direction. So that really is what keeps me going.
I love that. And we have another question from the Q&A box that I think relates to that idea of sort of keeping going. And this one is specific to keeping going during this pandemic moment. We have a question from Becky Bullard. This pandemic has knocked many women off a path of achievement and into full-time parenting / homeschooling. How do we keep from losing out on the contributions of women outside the home in this moment and the aftermath? It feels like so many of us have been set back without a clear idea of when we will emerge from our kitchens again.
Yeah, it's so hard because, one of the things, I have an answer that is actionable, but not easy, okay? So this has, like the pandemic laid bare, women had the highest rates of unemployment. We're also the most essential workers.
Yes.
And we're also in the lowest paid professions of the most essential workers, okay? So like if that doesn't speak to a broken system and the primary caregivers, right? It's broken every time you turn around, it's more brokenness. And I think that part of one of the things that we really have to upend about women's value is women's efforts not being valued as much as men. We make the world run, but men run the world. But the work that women do, from caring for, being school teachers and caring for, home health care workers, and also just in the workplace, we're all the ones that make everything run, is not valued. It's not given the importance that it needs to be. And I think, I've told women just in the last couple of days is that when you're asking for raises, you have to advocate for the value of that work that you do that people think doesn't count, because it has, I promise you, it has real monetary value in the marketplace in terms of the productivity of women. And that is, that's the kind of thing I think that when we have that, this is the symptoms of how broken it is. That's the thing that you have to flip, and people can, and again, women have to band together, because the truth is they cannot do it without us. So if we band together to make these same arguments about the work not being valued, and we sure have learned the value of teachers and home health care workers and child services and child care workers, we got to band together to make those arguments now.
Absolutely. And I think, the thread that you really are so clear in sort of showing to people is that banding together, right? And that the patriarchy thrives on dividing and conquering, and whether that is
and just dividing in apathy, Royce, just
exactly. So that's
let me tell you one more thing that makes me hopeful about this time. When in suffrage, when in the 1860s, there was an effort to try to get a constitutional amendment for women to gain universal suffrage, and it failed. And Elizabeth Cady Stanton said, and then it entered the doldrums phase where people just didn't really care and it just wasn't an issue. And Elizabeth Cady Stanton said, the next generation is not going to have our patience. The next generation was Ida B. Wells, Alice Paul, Elizabeth Cady Stanton's own daughter, Harriet Stanton Blatch. They are the ones that forced this issue in the early 1900s and eventually got the 19th Amendment ratified. I feel that same way about young women today, women that are under 30, that's they do not have the patience. And actually it's true, millennial women, which I know can be over 30 now, but they are the most likely group in America to believe that men have it easier than women. It's not the older women, it's the younger women who see they're getting more bachelor degrees, the guys getting more entry level positions. When they do get the entry level positions, the guys get the promotion to manager level faster than them by a factor of 2 to 1 or something ridiculous like that. They're living it. So the dissatisfaction of women makes me hopeful too.
Well, I love that. And we have one more question in the chat. And since we have asked you to sort of school your fellow white women already, this is actually a question from a white man. So let's see.
Chris Turner, who is it?
This is Giovanni.
Okay.
Says, I appreciated you sharing President Obama's practice of calling on women, and in particular women of color, to give their perspective. As a white male, what more can I be doing to lift up the voices of women, considering the sphere that I can influence?
Right. So I think there, you know, if you're a father, listen to women's music, watch women's television shows, show your children movies that feature women heroes, pay attention to women's sports. Like, these are the things, you know, if men had grown up in a world where every president was a woman, and every Sunday we all sat around the living room and watched women play soccer, and 17-1 you heard women's voices on radios as opposed to men, you would have some questions about your worth. Mm-hmm. So I really think it is like, it's embracing that kind of girl power. And if you are, you know, I am a big fan of Americana music, I'm a big fan of Jason Isbell, and he and his wife, Amanda Shires, are both singer-songwriters. And, you know, he said, women will wear my t-shirts, guys won't wear Amanda's t-shirts. Wear a woman's t-shirt, you know? And I think that there's things like that actually, that sound trivial, but they really, really matter, because they are what, it's like at our root of what we value. And then I think a lot of this, I find it true for a lot of progressive men and women both, because we're so sure that we are not racist and we are not sexist, we are very blind to the gender and race biases we have in our own heads. So when you're interviewing people and the white guy just continues to happen to be a better fit, right, you got to check yourself. Like, of course he's a better fit. It was made for him. The whole workplace was made to accommodate him. We're going back centuries and centuries. So it might be different with a woman to do that job. It might be different with a woman of color to do that job, but different could be better. And so embrace that too. And I think that those are, don't be satisfied. Like, what's your plan to getting your place of business to 50%? Listen to women, for God's sakes, don't interrupt them. The appropriating, that's the term Harvard Business Review came up with for when a woman says something and nobody pays attention to it, and then a man says it and everybody thinks it's brilliant. You know, don't do that.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah, they call it appropriating. It would happen to Hillary Clinton, by the way. It would happen to Hillary Clinton on her own presidential campaign. She would say something, nobody would say something. One of our male pollsters would say it, and everybody like, oh, that was smart. And I would have to say, I think the secretary was just making that point a few minutes ago. So listen to women and lift up their voices. It's not a small thing, it's a big deal.
Sadly, it doesn't surprise me that that would happen to Secretary Clinton on her presidential campaign. It seems ubiquitous. So
yeah, she would look at me like, and I'm like, yeah, so I think, yeah, that's a great point, Joel. I believe that's what the secretary was saying a few minutes ago.
Exactly. I don't know. Do they know that they're doing it?
Mm-mm. And by the way, women do it too. I mean, I don't mean to beat up on men, because women, we totally do it too. We ignore women's voices, and then a guy says it and we're like, oh, and it's not our, you know, we don't need to beat up ourselves up, because we've internalized this stuff for all of human history we are pushing against. Mm-hmm. But you know, you look around the world today, particularly in America, it's not like things are going great. This is not working out well for anybody. So, you know, more people having the chance to be heard and to succeed and hearing the perspectives, everybody will be better off.
Agreed.
Agreed. Amen, sister.
Annie's List, our team, our staff is entirely women of color. And I, was sort of casually mentioning that to a friend of mine, and he said, "Oh, really? Wow, how did you do that?" You know, it's sort of like you can hire women of color, you can hire women, you can hire people of color, you can hire people who did not go to your same school or do not associate with your same friends or any type of thing like that. You can just hire them.
You have to broaden your circles, because of course if you keep going back to the same fishing hole, like you keep like waiting for all of the graduates of, you know, Wharton Business School to look just like you, to not look just like you.
Exactly.
You're gonna be waiting for a long time. They will do the job differently. It will be better. It's fine. Stop waiting, because like what that belief is, when you're like, oh, I'm waiting for, you know, like the Wharton Business School graduates to all not be white men. Like what you're saying is only my model works.
Exactly.
And again, look around. It's not working. Not only is it not working well for people, it's just not working. The output is bad. Change the input.
To say the least. Well, and thank you so much for joining us today. This has been amazing. As always, I'm so honored to have you as part of the Annie's List family.
I love it. Go flip that house.
We're going to flip it. We're going to really make some changes. So thank you for supporting our work.
Yeah.
Please go by She Proclaims. You have heard Jen. She is wise. She is thoughtful on these issues. You will want to read this book. And for more info about Annie's List, please visit our website, annieslist.com, or follow us at Annie's List TX across your social media platforms. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you, everybody. And I'm sorry for my delay. I really appreciate everybody hanging in there and all the great questions. Absolutely.
Well, you know, it just gave more anticipation for your eventual successful debut here. So thank you, everyone. Thanks, y'all. And we will see you next time.
All right. Bye.